Ladies, gentlemen, and nightfarers of all ages, Elden Ring Nightreign has arrived, and people are having quite varied experiences across the board. From those who are purely enjoying the experience, those who have found some issues with the ways that the systems work in general, or those who are just struggling to find a party, if not queuing with friends. Or, well, if you're playing solo entirely, you've probably realized it is far from a cakewalk, and definitely the game is not designed to be done outside of a party of 3. So today, in the spirit of helping ease you into the start of the game and get you into the more enjoyable parts where you're more functional, today we're going to go over a bunch of mistakes to avoid making, or just general tips to help you do better within Nightreign as a whole. First things first, I mentioned it there, but you really should be playing as a group of 3 at least to start with. Solo runs are possible, they are doable, they are completable, but are significantly harder than group runs where you can revive each other. The game was absolutely designed with 3 players in mind, especially the ability to split aggro between multiple enemies, and so definitely while you are getting to grips with things, I recommend playing in a group. That said, if you don't already have people you are planning to play with, you are then a bit beholden to the game's matchmaking, which I've heard has been having quite a bit of issues so far at release, and of course, even if it works and you do find people, you are likely to find someone at least as new and informationless as you are in these first few days of the game's release. But if you're at the point of watching a video like this, chances are that you will be able to find people that are even less informed than you are, because the majority of people going into a game like this on day 1 won't be looking up too much beforehand. That said, if you want a slightly more organized option, we will be using the multiplayer password PROOB, P-R-O-O-B, short for pro and noob. You can use this as well to find other people from our channel's community, which at least gives you a little bit more of a selective group of people to pull from when matchmaking. That said, you can also take this even a step further by joining our Discord server, which is linked in the description, and then you can play with people using actual voice chat there as well. And communication makes this game so much easier than if you're just playing with people that you don't know and can't interact with. That said, moving in-game on the note of communication being important, even if you are playing with randoms you have no way of actually talking to, you can open up your map and place down markers. This is the easiest way to have some sort of organized group movement in your run when playing without voice chat, as it lets you coordinate where you want to go, which is important, as sticking together makes the whole process way more efficient, and ignoring your teammates would be a massive mistake. You want to work together and lean on each other for success. It's how the game is built. Next up, a more overarching choice, which is to consider which character you actually want to use. I recommend messing around with some, trying them out, especially in the training area before even entering a run, checking out what they do and how they feel, and finding which one gels with you the best. Because once you've made a decision, I recommend playing the same one over and over for a bit, getting comfortable with their abilities and their specific playstyle. Because all of the characters have their own unique passive ability, an active character skill with a short cooldown, and then an ultimate ability with a long cooldown, and each character serves a different sort of role, with some of them being better at just having big solo killing power, and others being more dependent on synergy and teamwork, but making the team success way better when they're there. An example of an extremely strong thing that may not appear so from the start is Ironeye's passive Eagle Eye. This, quite literally, will generate more item drops over the course of an expedition, as it is a chance for a bonus item anytime you get an item dropped from an enemy. This means more opportunities for good loot across the whole run, and all it takes is 1 or 2 good drops to absolutely carry a run. This also applies to all allies, so just having 1 ironeye in your squad is the equivalent of looting more items over the course of the expedition, and that's just the passive on one of the characters as an example of why these skills matter. Past that, once you have chosen the character that you like the look of, come have a look at the visual codex in the western hallway of the roundtable hold, and here you can look at the characters in a bit more depth and even see their actual scaling stats. This is the only place that you can properly see them, but each character has different base stats and different scaling weights that change how they improve as you level up. Leveling up is generally pretty much the greatest source of power gain in the game, but this will show you exactly how each character improves when you level them up. As well, a few of the characters have a preferred weapon type listed here, and when using that weapon type, they will have a unique moveset compared to any of the other characters using that same weapon type. This doesn't mean that you have to use that weapon type when you're playing that character, but it is definitely a uniquely interesting part of what makes them tick. For those of you who are familiar with base Elden Ring, the actual main game, you will will know how the different weapon types scale differently already, and this stays true for Nightreign. You won't see the scaling stats on weapons mid-run, but you can check them as well in the visual codex between your runs to refresh your memory. This will give you a general idea of what kinds of weapons you want to use with each character because of their scaling, as it would be a mistake to use a mainly strength scaling weapon on Recluse as an example, especially in a world where the Raider exists, which is the big strength scaler. Next tip, and it's a relatively simple one, but always finish your expeditions. I know, especially if it is really going to hell early on, it can be tempting to quit to the main menu and abandon completely, but even a lost expedition gives you progress towards permanent power. Because as this game is a roguelite, there is a mechanic for permanent player power gain that comes and increases from one run to the next. This is mainly built around the relics and the Murk currency. The currency is mostly used to purchase more relics from the Jar Bazaar in the hub, and these relics can be slotted in on each character. I won't go too crazy in depth on describing what the relics are, but simply put, these will have sometimes up to 3 different passive effects on each one, and you can equip up to 3 relics per character. So these just give you a lot of passive power potential, even right at the very beginning of a run. And importantly, even just having a random set of 3 relics equipped will make you stronger than your first run when you have none of them. So even in losing situations, let the loss play out. Collect your relics and see if they're an upgrade, because it could help you out. If you persevere and make it to the end, you could be stronger for your next expedition. But also, just as a more general tip, don't ignore the relics. Make sure you actually interact with that system, because it just makes the game easier. Next up, moving to the actual map a bit more specifically, your first expedition will always have Gladius as the Nightlord end boss, Tricephalos. I won't spoil anything past that as this is the first day, but this means that if you are trying to get your first win and open up the game a bit more, it will always have the same final enemy. You can see the weaknesses of every Nightlord listed when selecting the expedition quite easily, and you can use that in conjunction with map symbols to find an area that has those types of items. If the Nightlord is weak to fire, you would probably want to look for runes or a mega church with the fire element symbol on it on the map. In this case, Tricephalos is weak to holy damage, so you want to look for holy damage locations on the map to farm holy damage for your way along to the final boss, which will then make that boss, the hardest challenge of the run, easier to beat at the end. Next up, big mistake would be ignoring ranged weapons. In regular Elden Ring, ranged weapons are awkward and clunky for a number of reasons, but in Nightreign they are incredibly potent for a couple of ways. First, they have unlimited ammo, so arrow count is not a thing you need to think about in this game. And second, they are ranged, which is obvious of course, but it's important to mention that because the revive mechanic in this game works around hitting your downed allies after they run out of health, you can target a downed ally with a bow and fire at them from far away. This is generally far safer than trying to do so in melee range with an enemy attacking you, of course, so it's never a bad idea to have a bow around in your back pocket, even if you don't want to use it for actual damage. On top of which, another mistake would be having empty weapon slots in general to begin with. There are 3 main sources of power gain in the middle of an expedition. The first is raw level increase, as gaining levels increases your stats as a whole, but also because you need to reach a certain level threshold to use epic quality weapons or legendary quality weapons as well, which generally do more damage than the lower quality weapons do. They have better effects and are just more valuable as a whole. The second is equipment and items themselves, things like the weapon that you actually hold in your hand, as having a better weapon means you will do notably more damage and stuff like that. But importantly, you want to make sure all of your weapon slots are filled, because a big part of weapon power in this game is the passive effects that are on the weapon, and you can see them listed here. Any effect that doesn't have a red hand symbol on it specifically when looking at the item info will be active on you passively and permanently if the weapon is in any of your slots, main hand or offhand. If it has a red hand, that means it has to be equipped, so in your first main hand or offhand slot, even if you are two-handing a weapon, it will still work. This means you can get 6 sets of passive effects if you fill each of these slots, and so even if an effect is only sort of meh, or if the weapon that the effect is on is something you'd never really want to use in a fight, if you have an empty slot, pick it up, and think of your weapon slots as being passive static boosters rather than something that you would actually want in your hands, of course aside from the 1 weapon slot for your main weapon. That said, the third main source of power is boss powers. When you kill a boss or open some chests around the world, you will get an orb to interact with. Using this gives you a choice of multiple options. Sometimes it's equipment, sometimes it's just a passive permanent power. For the most part, you just want to pick whatever makes sense for your expedition and for your synergies so far. If a weapon is an upgrade and scales with your character, you probably do want to have that. If you have an option that increases maximum stamina, as an example, and none of the other options are really relevant, then you probably still want to grab that. There are even things like increasing the amount of runes that you gain permanently for the rest of the run, which is crazy if you get it early, or just large flat piles of runes as options of reward as well, which then of course funnels back into the fact that leveling up is a main source of power. All that said, there is only one power I'm aware of that I really recommend not taking if you see it. Hollow even mentioned it in another video on the channel recently, but do not take the flask healing over time upgrade unless you have a very specific plan or synergy for it. It is a trap that reads as if it gives you bonus healing on top of the regular flask, but what it does is literally change the entire heal from your flask to be over time. This means you have no burst regen in the slightest if you take it, which is more than a little bit tough to work around and can actually kill your run. All that said, on the map you will see skulls that move around a bit. These are roaming bosses that are quite big lads. They are generally harder than the bosses in more set locations, but also tend to drop better quality rewards. As a result, personally I avoid them until day 2, but then I grab as many as I can on day 2 for some nice mid-run scaling, just sort of pathing from one of these skull bosses to the next. This extends especially into these shifting earth events that can happen. After you finish your first run, you will unlock the first one, which is the volcanic crater, just sort of existing in the center of the map. This has some of these skull bosses inside of it, and importantly, can get you some really powerful stuff if you get all the way to the center of it. One final note about bosses then is that every time that you kill an enemy that gives you a boss health bar on the screen, they will spawn a site of grace in the area. Usually bosses are the biggest source of runes, and of course they tend to take some flasks while you're killing them. So always make use of this free site of grace that you get every time. Level up if you have the runes to do so, or just use it to refill your healing. Past this, just a couple of notes for the start of an expedition run. Your first focus above all else at the beginning should be getting a couple of easy levels while the rune requirement is low, because at level 1 you are pathetically weak. At level 4 you're actually somewhat functional. So instead of making the mistake of rushing to a boss at level 1, maybe take out some smaller camps, some runes, some churches with groups of smaller, weaker enemies to power you up to begin with. Then you can go on and kill bosses faster anyways, which of course means it's just more efficient use of your time, considering that the day is on a timer to begin with. Then also, I want to make a point of the Churches of Marika. These will always give you a full heal, a flask refresh, and they will give you one bonus maximum flask for the rest of the run. I have had 8 flask charges on a run, which is significantly more than the starting amount, and of course, in something like the night bosses or the Nightlord, sometimes the fights can go quite long, and when they are long enough, that actually means that the flask charges can make all the difference. So make getting more charges a bit of a priority within reason. Don't go from the west side of the map to the east side in one day just for a church, but make sure that you work them in as a main priority in your pathing with what's near you. Then the final note, which will be slightly vague for the sake of letting you experience it yourself, is that there is an NPC who first introduces you to the game once you get to the roundtable hold. After you successfully finish the Tricephalos expedition for the first time and actually beat the Nightlord, you will get a specific relic called the Old Pocketwatch. Once you have this, have a conversation with the NPC in the hold, and something extremely impactful will happen, but I will let you find out exactly what that is within your own game. That just about does it for today then, everyone. We'll have a bunch of Nightreign stuff coming out over the next couple of days at least. Hopefully it helps you get some more enjoyment out of the game, and if you want to know anything more specific, feel free to ask down in the comments below. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.